Hey gamers, this is Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire, and today I'm going to be reviewing X-ODUS, Rise of the Corruption. X-ODUS Rise of the Corruption is a 1 to 4 player co-op game where you can either control multiple ships yourself, or you and your friends can each control one, and your goal is to explore the universe looking for what are called precursor keys. Essentially, the premise of the game is that at one point the precursors to you shut out some really nasty corruption that was destroying your entire galaxy or space system. But now the corruption is coming back. So what you need to do is you need to explore until you can find and secure all of the precursor keys and then take them to one big main rift. So these red tiles are rifts. There's one with like a bigger marker in the front of it that's the main rift that you'll find at the end of the game. And you need to bring the precursor keys to it and activate them there. To complicate your situation, every single turn this corruption track is going to go up, and when you hit certain spaces there are avatars that emerge from the avatar deck and will chase you all around your system trying to kill you, and they are pretty darn good at it. Meanwhile, on your ships, you're going to start with one augmentation, but as you gain experience you're going to get more. So every ship has its own augmentation deck. Every ship has its own health, so these are little markers of how your hull is doing. You've got an energy meter. You're collecting scrap, which is the currency in the game. And what's really interesting is that every ship has a bit of a different playstyle, both because they're going to have different combinations of dice that have different hit, miss, and special symbol combinations on them. So let's pick up the yellow one since it's pretty visible. So a circle would be a miss. This little POW marker would be a hit. And then this lightning bolt is a special symbol that you're looking for in some skill checks. So everyone has different dice with different configurations of symbols on the faces, and also gaining experience and thus getting more augmentations from your augmentation deck involves something different for each ship. So this ship gets experience when it uses a repair action. This one, the warship, gains experience when it defeats an enemy. The explorer uses explore action to gain experience, and the pirate gets experience when it gains scraps during combat or explorations. So everyone's going to have a slightly different motivation, certain things they're encouraged to be good at, and those inclinations are going to be kind of doubled down on by the dice, the way that you level up, and the augmentations that are going to be available in your augmentation deck. So let's just start everybody on this main tile. So you start with a rift. Rifts are where avatars are able to appear. So you start your system with one, and then you're going to keep digging through this pile of tiles. So let's look at a couple of the different tiles and what they mean so you can get a sense of what's going on in the game. One good thing about X-ODUS is that there's a whole lot of pieces. It looks like there's a whole lot going on, but actually turn to turn the game is fairly simple. Each turn you have a very clear set of actions that are available to you. So let's say that our explorer is going to use one action to send a probe, and what that means is that you can look at another system tile without actually moving into it and thus maybe getting into a fight. So we get to flip it and look. Ooh, it's a friendly system because it is blue. These bits at the borders are places that you can't pass through, but these are open edges. So here there's a border along here. So you can't place it like this, but you could absolutely place it like that. And no one's moved into it because we used a probe and that caused an action, but it also gave us a little bit of foresight. Also, as you draw these tiles, are going to have different symbols on them. This one here is a wormhole, so if you have another tile with a wormhole, you can teleport between them. Unfortunately, your avatar enemies sometimes can too, depending on their die rolls, so watch out. This one is an explore action, so what was going to happen is we'll put a little explore cube on here to note that this tile can be explored. You can only take an exploration one time per tile. Then, of course, you can always just jump into a tile. That's just a movement. That'll cost you an action. If I do choose to explore, what will happen is we'll remove this exploration cube and draw one of the exploration cards, which is going to set up a lot of different choices for me. So in this case, we have an underground relay. There will always be a class-specific option, so that rogue over there on the left, you can choose to dismantle the relay for 4 scraps, or you can discard any damage that you have. So you choose one of those things per exploration, and you get different configurations of options every time you draw one of these cards. So just to walk you through some of the other options really quick, you can do a blind jump, which means that you jump into a tile without knowing what's on it. So we can end up just hopping over into here. And of course, you'll have another exploration. But there's also a symbol for an enemy, and there's the possibility of avoiding that enemy. So depending on whether you're in the shape to fight or not, you can attempt to roll dice and go undetected. You can do a hyperspace rush, but that means that you took multiple jumps in a row. You can explore, which is what I just showed you. You can trade, so some of these will have symbols that show you there's an ally there who's willing to trade with you. So you can basically spend some of the scrap you've gained to get some ship modules and make your ship fancy. You can do ship maintenance, which lets you kind of not go anywhere but do a little bit of repair work, which can be really important, especially if you've taken a beating. And the other thing that's sort of interesting is that there's a scavenge action, which allows you to either gain a scrap, or if someone had one of these precursor keys but was defeated and dropped it, you can go to that space, scavenge, and pick it up. As you explore, there are going to be tiles that show that there's a precursor signal being given off, and then basically you're going to go to that spot. You're going to draw these cards just like you would an exploration card and complete a task in order to gain the precursor key associated with the card. So the idea is to progress through this tile deck until you're able to take the actions to get all of these keys, make it to the main rift, and end the game. If anything else happens, you all die, you run out of time, you will lose. So now that we've gone through the actions, there's one other aspect of gameplay that I want to talk about, which is that you don't have to do all of your actions alone. On your turn, you have the option of teaming up with someone else who hasn't already taken their actions this turn and forming a fleet. So what that means is that you're taking your actions together. You don't get as many individual actions all over the board, but you fight together, you try skill checks together, and trust me, it is nice to have somebody who has your back when there's an avatar running around the board trying to get you. So the possibility of forming a fleet just adds another layer of interesting choice to the game, and I think it may actually be the thing that makes X-ODUS a unique game. And that's an overview of X-ODUS: Rise of the Corruption. So now for some final thoughts. X-ODUS is a good game. I've really enjoyed many aspects of it, including leveling up the ship, deciding how I wanted to explore. So do I spend an action to probe, or am I just going to blind jump somewhere? And I liked that each ship offered you some different strategic choices because each ship levels up differently and has different strengths and weaknesses. There were a couple of different ways to customize the build of those ships. And you could also play them in different combinations because as a solo player, I tend to pick 2 or 3 and then see how the game plays out with different combinations. The exploration cards also provided a lot of variety, and while there weren't as many different enemies or avatars, the game offers so much challenge that generally that was fine. And you still don't know exactly in what order or configuration things are going to pop out at you. I also want to give a thumbs up to the production values of this game. It was very well put together, the cardboard quality was very, very nice. I liked the slots and the player mats for different pieces, including your dice. And also, actually, I liked that this felt like a pretty big box game, and on the table presence of this game is enormous. But the box itself is not really that big, and that's something I actually really appreciate, especially since it feels like my shelves are overwhelmed with giant games right now. So, X-ODUS is good. That said, I'm not sure that it's really great. I felt like a lot of aspects of this game didn't actually bring anything new to the table. I feel like I've played a lot of games at this point where you get some buffs to your character. I felt like the actions were actions I had taken before, like choosing to move cautiously versus boldly, or getting 2 upgrade choices and having to decide which one I want. In many ways, the game felt very familiar, even though it's probably because I've played it in a fantasy setting as opposed to a space setting. I don't play a whole lot of space games, so I think if you're looking for a space game that feels like some of the fantasy games that are out on the market, that X-ODUS may be more for you than it is for me. I think the most unique aspect of X-ODUS was the fleet mechanism, where you can combine your ships and have them move as one and share actions, but also share stats. And on the one hand, that's a really cool idea. On the other, I think it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. In solo, it doesn't matter as much because you don't actually have to share your turns with another actual human. But it's really clear from the game that you will need to fleet up at certain points in order to beat certain challenges, which means that every ship doesn't get to go do its own thing the whole time. And it does limit your ability to have those ships move apart from each other and kind of do individual things. But X-ODUS is a very solid game. I think it's very ripe for expansion. And I think that's a good thing because I will warn you, X-ODUS is currently difficult to get into the United States. The Dice Tower unboxed it maybe 5 months ago and then sent it on to me. And so just kind of as a check when I was doing this review, I looked around the internet and you can get into the shop through the late pledge. But the shop has all prices in euros and does not currently deliver to the United States. I suspect that that has something to do with COVID-19 and that should loosen up. But if you want a copy right now, you're going to have to get ready to trade or eBay it with someone who already has it in the States. Or if you're in Europe, you'll have an easier time. That said, X-ODUS is a fun, decent game. I don't necessarily think it's a must-have, but if you're looking for a solid space-themed co-op, then it may be one to keep an eye out for. I personally give it a 7 out of 10 and a Dice Tower seal of approval. Happy gaming!